Colleagues, greetings to everyone. Today we have a bit of content with a reaction and verification to see if it's really like that. A bit of a toxic day. We'll watch the reaction to Nuno Maduro's review of Filament 4. A revolution happened, folks. All sources are trumpeting that Filament 4 is something incredible. Laravel News even published an article listing all its features. But the main revolution is that Filament 4 is 3 times faster than Filament 3. And I wanted to analyze the interview video where Nuno Maduro asked the creator of Filament questions. They looked at what's new, and of course the key point, it's faster. Let's play it and see what it's about. They demonstrate how Filament 3 handles 1000 records. Although they trimmed everything, so I actually can't see whether there were indeed 1000 records. I don't know how many models or how much memory was used, and besides, they didn't fully reload the page. They made a Livewire component request for an update, which simply returned HTML with new records. Or the items were an array that was directly injected, so it's not a full reload. But we do see that on their machine loading takes about 3 seconds. Okay, 3 seconds for 1000 records doesn't really bother me, but if we rewind a bit, we see they switch to Filament 4. That's when the revolution happens. Nuno Maduro is literally shocked.
So Filament 4, that is a 1 second render. 3 times faster than 2 to...
Yes, it's 3 times faster. Again, this isn't a full reload, they just sent a request to the Livewire component, and we still can't see what's happening under the hood. Let's pause here for now. Then we'll see on my machine what actually happens with Filament 3, Filament 4, and MoonShine. Okay friends, I deployed Filament 3. The demo is exactly the same they showed, nothing changed on my side, just deployed it and spun up a virtual server. Let's go and see what's happening. Okay, navigate to Posts. Yes, I already set it to display 1000 records, and I created 1000 posts in the database. So friends, what do we actually see? Note, the page loaded overall. Filament opened, we can scroll, but only the first 10 records, no more. So I'd say the stress test failed, you can't really use it. And on my machine we see memory usage of about 110 megabytes and 10 seconds time. In my view, the test didn't pass. The admin panel can't support that many records, we can't browse through them. We can view some subset, and then, the browser died. Overall, nothing special. Okay guys, now let's see what happens with Filament 4. So, I deployed Filament 4, the only change was switching pagination to all. Let's revisit, it broke something, no big deal, refresh and wait. Notice, with Filament 3 we had 10 seconds. Okay, 10 seconds, but we at least saw the table with 4 records. Now we just have a blank screen, we're still waiting for rendering. Yes, it did get faster, down from 10 to about 3.5 seconds. Memory seemed similar, but I still don't consider it a pass stress test. Nothing works, we don't see anything. Nothing. I clicked, but suddenly posts started loading. Not sure why, they began rendering. Looks like Livewire got a bit wonky. So, if you merge this clip with Nuno Maduro's segment, you could say something is displayed. Debug bar dropped out. Here we see it got 3 times faster, but only to about 3 seconds, not 1 second. Understandable, different hardware. In general it works like this, but again, nothing is actually functional, we can't navigate anywhere. Livewire misbehaved and sent us somewhere, into cards, twice. Like we entered a card, and inside another. Now I clicked, and now something is displayed. Okay, that's resolved. Now let's check the same with MoonShine. Friends, now MoonShine 3. Note, I have no idea what will happen, I'm fairly sure it won't pass the stress test either, but there was never a revolution in MoonShine performance, I didn't optimize much. It uses a standard eloquent builder, with cursor pagination. Just a query. Default eloquent interaction, if you need optimization, you do it yourself. No revolution. But let's see what happens. I also loaded posts, just text. Again, 1000 records. So we waited until it loaded. But here's the difference, we see the full table, and we can scroll through all 1000 records. Same configuration, same laptop, same 1000 records. Yes, it took a long time for the browser to render, but in the end memory was high, but less than Filament 4, around 78 megabytes, and the time was also around 3 seconds. So there's a revolution where none was planned. MoonShine 3 is just as fast as Filament 4. Another interesting point, MoonShine 2 performed even better, since it sacrificed some components to allow inline editing, which added extra iterations. Because of that, performance fell. But even so, for 1000 records, MoonShine is faster than Filament. But note, Filament stress test still failed, I saw nothing, couldn't interact, whereas here we can interact, open records, open modals. Also, regarding modals. Let's jump back to Nuno Maduro's video, he's surprised.
Because any modal can have.
They discuss modal speed improvements. Let's see what's happening there.
Any components inside of it. So if we were to pre-render all of those modals at once, at the start of the request, it would mean that there's so much HTML with here. Like, it's just impossible. So we do make the server request to render the content of the modal, because it's just more efficient for us to do that. However, in Filament 3, what happens when you click a modal is, it's going to make a request to the server, and because it's a Livewire component, it's going to render the entire Livewire component, so the entire table before it renders the modal. As you can see in the response, this is the HTML for the Livewire component, so it contains the entire table along with the modal. Now this took probably like 3 seconds. I can look at the timing maybe. Yeah, 3.
Friends, opening a modal in Filament 3 with the table of 1000 took 4 seconds. They loaded the entire Livewire component, the whole table, huge HTML. Filament's repo, 25,000 stars, 1,000 contributors. This wasn't new to version 4, it's been this way since version 1. Yet here we were, clapping and using an admin panel that opens a modal in 4 seconds, loading everything. Now MoonShine, let's see. On the page with 1000 records that Filament couldn't even handle, modals opened in 84 milliseconds, nearly instantly. That request took 44 milliseconds. It's the same simple primitive modal. Yes, the browser barely recovered from rendering the 1000 records, memory was around 70 megabytes and load time around 3 seconds, but we can interact. We can work with the table, live inside it. And MoonShine has only 1000 stars and 41 contributors, only one is actively maintaining now, but that's interesting. If we look further in the Filament 4 video, they talk about modal optimization. Now they claim 111 milliseconds loading. Before, it was a nightmare, not production worthy. It shouldn't have been that slow for an entire major version, like a critical bug. Why didn't anyone say, hey, what are you doing? You're loading everything, spending tons of time rendering a simple text modal. Instead they just started. After recording, I realized I had tested MoonShine without images. I trimmed the full client-side page load moment in Filament, from start to all images loaded took 3 minutes. I also recorded how MoonShine behaves with 1000 images all returning 404, the result was identical. Okay, let's go further. I noticed they're in that table and Livewire makes a ton of requests. We'll talk about that. Then they look at so-called reactivity, in Livewire.
Is Filament like the same in Filament 3?
What happens? He toggles a switcher, which opens a code block, and requests fly. I want to draw attention, when you use tools built on some heavy framework that supposedly simplifies your life, you have no right to use it without knowing how it works under the hood. Why? Especially here, you have a framework on top of a framework, double responsibility. You just press something magically and things happen. Livewire isn't reactive, it works via HTTP requests. You change something, a request flies to the back end. If you're using version 3, it'll take about 3 seconds again, the whole page returns, then Livewire figures out what to update. My thought, you shouldn't use Livewire if you don't know Alpine.js. You need to master both. Here, you don't need Livewire at all. You should use Alpine.js to make the input reactive, use xshow or xif to open/close the block. No extra requests necessary. So those 24,000 stars, they may be people who don't really understand what's under the hood. They use a product with poor performance, maybe they don't even realize it. And that's sad. Livewire is good for developers who don't understand things. When you use a simple form, updates fire tons of requests, and you don't know when to implement rendering, some magic happens internally. But if you deeply understand the under-the-hood mechanics and Alpine.js, you can live with Livewire. But at some point you realize, why use Livewire when Alpine.js does it all, and performance is much better, though with less syntactic sugar. I'll add one final thought. I noticed recently, as I'm doing static analysis in MoonShine and upgrading everything to the latest. I've updated most packages, only 2 subrepos remain. Despite that, the PHP stand config hasn't changed, and there's a big ignore section. I'd like fewer, but many traits and Laravel/Larastan interfaces still aren't fixed. I didn't open a pull request, but the ignore is huge. Recently I looked at Filament, Color Manager, converting to the new color format, and it felt like it was generated by an LLM, lots of comments from LLM, strange typing. I thought, they have PHP stand static analysis, but how does it pass? I looked at their config and saw nearly 1,000 lines of ignore. So when I started translating MoonShine to PHP stand at level 5 or 6, I got about 800 to 900 errors. So one could just throw those all into ignore and call the optimization done. That's the thing. So friends, this turned into a kind of entertaining video, just a reaction, verification of how it really works, since it seemed weird they didn't show the full screen. Turns out it doesn't operate very well. We tested under real conditions, and also compared to MoonShine. As you see, I try not to speak harshly about Filament. I respect every effort, it's a great tool. Which one to choose, that's up to each of you. I wish Filament continued success, PHP ecosystem growth. Honestly, recently I wondered, if MoonShine didn't exist and I had to choose, would I use Filament? Probably I'd take a few steps, watch reactions and reviews, deploy and test, even though I probably wouldn't need to list 1,000 records in an admin. It was more a stress test, but also illustrative and interesting. Still, I think I would never choose Filament. Firstly, I know how Livewire works. I used it on multiple projects and got burned every time. I keep saying, I built projects with Livewire and got disappointed over and over. I thought, okay, last project had 2 components, here only 1. Even knowing how it works, not trusting everything, monitoring requests, I ended up adding Alpine.js, and eventually thought, where is Livewire besides dependencies, and removed it, leaving Alpine.js. That's my story. So Livewire presence would be a red flag. Especially in a large system. You can't imagine how complicated big admin systems become, universal solutions for a vast, evolving audience. It's a huge complex machine. If that machine is topped with heavy Livewire, it won't go far. There may be 100,000 stars and lots of blog praise about revolutions, tailwind updates, etc., but I would pick different admin panels, which I'll mention another time. That's it, friends, hope you enjoyed the video. Don't take things personally, hugs to all, best of luck, keep developing PHP and ecosystem. Products like Filament attract a lot of attention. They have great marketing, bringing more people to PHP. Meanwhile we'll keep doing our thing, growing MoonShine, making it bigger. I think in version 4 I'll finally think about performance under the hood, though now, it's already decent. That's all, folks, thanks for watching and see you in the next video on our channel.